Welcome to the Midnight Codex, where forgotten truths breathe and shadows tell their tale. Tonight, don't blink and don't look behind you.
I need to write this down. Maybe someone will believe me. Maybe not. But I don't know how much longer I have. The thing is, I wasn't supposed to be here. But now I'm trapped. Trapped in a place where the shadows don't just follow you, they know your name. My fingers trembled as I scribbled down the words, my pen scratching across the paper with urgency. I didn't know why I was even bothering. Was anyone ever going to read this? Was there even a point to finishing it? My mind raced, but one thought lingered. If I didn't get it out now, the chance might slip away forever. And something told me there wouldn't be a second chance. It all started with a job offer, just like any other. At first, it seemed like another mundane opportunity, something to pay the bills, a night watchman at a museum on the edge of the city. The Shadow Gallery, they called it. The name alone should have made me hesitate, but there was something oddly compelling about it, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. The paycheck was decent enough, and the idea of working somewhere with such an unusual reputation sparked a flicker of curiosity in me. But curiosity had a cost. The museum itself was strange. When I first walked through its doors, it seemed like any old building, high ceilings, dim lighting, old wood creaking underfoot. Yet, there was something off about it. The walls felt too thick, the air too dense, as if the very building were holding its breath. There were no windows, no obvious exit besides the main entrance. The exhibits were odd, relics and art pieces that had more in common with folklore than history. Ancient tomes with pages that felt unnervingly alive to the touch. Artifacts that seemed to shimmer when you weren't looking at them directly. None of this fazed me at first. I dismissed it as eccentricity. People had always told strange stories about the museum, the way people got lost inside, the rumors of strange occurrences, the whispers of objects being more than they seemed. But I wasn't the superstitious type. I was just a guy trying to make ends meet. So, I took the job. The first night felt like any other. The eerie silence of the museum was broken only by the occasional sound of my footsteps echoing in the hallways. I was told my duties were simple. Walk the halls, keep an eye on the security cameras, and make sure no one was sneaking around after hours. Easy enough. What could go wrong? Then I met Mr. Finch. The man was a shadow of himself, pale, gaunt, his voice thin but sharp. He handed me a piece of paper with a set of instructions written in precise, almost robotic handwriting. "Follow these," Finch said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. "And whatever you do, don't break them. The museum, it's not what you think." My stomach tightened, but I didn't ask questions. Instead, I laughed it off, thinking it was just part of the job, a weird initiation ritual to keep things interesting. The rules seemed simple at first glance, but something about them gnawed at me. As I read them, I felt the air in the room shift, the temperature drop by a fraction. It was subtle, but undeniable. Never step into the basement after midnight. Always keep the lights on in the east wing. If the shadow of a person moves on its own, do not follow it. Never speak to the mannequins in the foyer. Leave before dawn. Never stay past the first light of morning. I scoffed. "Really? This is what you're worried about?" I said, almost to myself, but the silence that followed felt heavy. Finch was still staring at me, his gaze unwavering. "Just follow the rules," he said softly, as if repeating a prayer. "Trust me." I tucked the paper into my pocket, but the feeling lingered. I laughed to myself as I walked through the museum's darkened corridors. The first hour passed uneventfully. The light from the security cameras gave the place an odd, cold glow, but nothing out of the ordinary seemed to happen. I made my rounds, checked the exhibits, and counted the minutes. Then, it happened. As I walked past the east wing, the lights flickered, and for a brief moment, the air in the room felt thick, like the walls were closing in. I paused. I'd only been here an hour, but already the museum felt like it was watching me. My heart skipped a beat as I realized the lights in the east wing were dimming, just as the rules had said they would if you didn't follow them. But no one had told me how quickly it would happen or how quickly the museum would take hold of you. The mannequins in the foyer were still. I had to admit, I didn't like the way they seemed to watch me, their glassy eyes reflecting back at me from the shadows. I kept moving. Don't think about it. It's all just superstition, I reminded myself. My flashlight fell on something unusual. A figure appeared at the far end of the hallway, a shadow, elongated and dark, moving against the flow of light. I froze. It couldn't be. My breath hitched as I stared, my mind racing. The shadow was moving on its own. The air seemed to still around me, and for a moment the world felt like it had stopped. I remembered the rule. If the shadow of a person moves on its own, do not follow it. For a moment, my body refused to move. I should have turned back, gone to the safety of the security office, but instead, I took a step forward. Just one. A mistake that would haunt me for the rest of my life. The shadow moved again. It was leading me down a corridor I hadn't seen before, one that hadn't been there earlier, a passage that wasn't on any map. I swallowed. I had to follow it. The deeper I went, the more the air seemed to thicken around me. The walls warped, and faint whispers echoed in my mind, sending a creeping sense of dread into my chest. I felt it then, the unmistakable pressure of being watched. But there was no one else here. Just me, the shadow, and the silence. I turned a corner, and came face to face with the door, the one leading down to the basement. It was already open. I could feel it. Whatever was down there had been waiting for me, just like the rules said. And I knew then. I was no longer in control. I should have stopped. I should have turned around and left before things got worse. But the pull to keep moving forward, to uncover what lay hidden in the basement, was too strong. I stepped closer, the air growing colder with each step. It wasn't just a door, it was an invitation. The faint whispers grew louder. The closer I got, the more real they felt. I could almost make out words, but they were jumbled, disjointed, like a broken record. It was almost like they were calling my name, beckoning me closer. Something was down there, something waiting. I hesitated, standing at the threshold. The dark abyss below was too vast for my flashlight to reach. I didn't want to go any further. I wanted to turn around and forget this ever happened. But something was pushing me, forcing me to step closer, one foot after the other. I couldn't help it. The door creaked open further, revealing a steep staircase leading down into the depths of the building. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of mildew hit me like a punch in the face. It was the kind of smell that made you question how long something had been left to rot in the dark. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine, but I forced myself to move forward. The rules were clear. Never step into the basement after midnight. But here I was, standing at the top of the stairs, already breaking the first rule. I glanced at my watch. 12:05 a.m. I had no idea how I'd ended up here. My mind was in a haze, a fog of confusion and fear. But there was no going back now. The whispers seemed to intensify, swirling around me in the darkness. It was as if the entire building was alive, breathing, shifting around me. I reached for the railing, my hand gripping the cold metal as I descended, each step echoing louder than the last. The light from my flashlight flickered, casting strange, elongated shadows across the walls. They seemed to stretch, twist, and bend unnaturally as I descended deeper. I wanted to stop, turn around, and run back to the safety of the hallways. But my legs wouldn't obey. They kept moving, drawing me closer to whatever was waiting in the basement. By the time I reached the bottom of the stairs, the cold air was suffocating. It felt like a different world down here. The space was vast, the walls lined with shelves filled with relics, some of them covered in thick layers of dust. But there was something unsettling about the way the objects sat, almost as if they were waiting to be touched, to be uncovered. I took a step further into the basement, my flashlight barely illuminating the area ahead. The beams of light danced across shelves, old crates, and strange artifacts that seemed to be watching me from the shadows. Then I saw it. At the far end of the room, there was a strange pedestal. On it rested a mirror, a large, ornate mirror with a dark, swirling frame. The surface of the glass was dim, like it had been untouched for centuries. But something about it called to me. I couldn't look away. The whispers grew louder, clearer now. They were coming from the mirror. I could hear them, the voices, distorted, echoing in my head. Come closer. My heart hammered in my chest, but my body moved on its own, stepping closer to the pedestal. My mind screamed at me to stop, to run, to turn around and never look back. But my feet continued to move, drawn to the mirror as if some unseen force were pulling me in. I reached out, my hand trembling as I neared the surface of the glass. The air grew colder still, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker in the reflection, just a glimpse of something moving in the dark. I paused, my hand inches from the glass. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and I could feel it. A presence, something in the room with me. It was behind me. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. The basement was still, quiet, except for the whispers growing louder and louder. I looked back at the mirror. This time the reflection was different. The glass rippled like water disturbed by a stone. The image in the mirror shifted, contorting into something dark and twisted. I stepped back, my heart racing in my chest. I wanted to run. I wanted to get out of there, but the rules had been broken, and now the museum had me. I couldn't breathe. The air around me seemed to close in, thick with the weight of whatever had taken hold of this place. The mirror had changed. It wasn't just a reflection anymore. It was something else, a doorway, a portal to something darker. I couldn't look away. The whispers, the low hum of voices seemed to swirl around me, echoing in my mind like a haunting lullaby. My legs felt weak beneath me, but somehow I found the strength to move. Slowly I backed away from the pedestal, my eyes never leaving the mirror. The air was suffocating, pressing in on me from all sides. Every step I took felt like a struggle. My mind screamed at me to leave, to get out of the basement, but something was holding me here. I turned around, half expecting to see someone standing behind me, but there was no one, only shadows, and the mirror still reflecting a world that felt far too real to be just an illusion. The basement felt wrong. It wasn't just the objects, the eerie artifacts, or the whispering voices. It was the way everything seemed to pulse with a hidden energy, as if the walls themselves were alive, breathing with an ancient, malevolent force. I reached the stairs, my hand gripping the railing once more. But as I began to climb, a sound stopped me, a low, scraping noise from the bottom of the basement. It sounded like something being dragged, something heavy. I froze. My heart skipped a beat, and I turned back toward the darkness below, the mirror. I had to get out. I turned to run, but something stopped me. The shadows in the basement seemed to stretch, to grow, as if they were reaching for me. I could hear the whispering again, this time louder, more insistent. My name. It was calling me. I wanted to cover my ears, to drown out the sound, but it was inside my head now. Everywhere. David, I stumbled up the stairs, but it wasn't enough. The shadows followed me, crawling along the walls, twisting and writhing like living things. The air grew thicker with every step, heavier, like it was pushing me back down. I couldn't escape them. The basement, the mirror, the rules. I had broken them all. I reached the top of the stairs, gasping for air, but the darkness followed. I could feel it. The pressure was unbearable, suffocating. I stumbled toward the door that led back to the main hallway, but it wouldn't open. The handle turned, but the door was locked, sealed shut. I slammed my shoulder against it, desperate to get out, but it wouldn't budge. I was trapped. I looked around, panic surging in my chest. The hallway was empty, but the walls felt like they were closing in, pressing me toward the very heart of the museum. I couldn't explain it, but the building was alive. It was watching me, guiding me, trapping me. The whispering grew louder, and then I saw it. A figure standing at the far end of the hallway, the shadow I had followed earlier. It was moving again, but it wasn't just a shadow this time. It had form, substance. The figure was tall, with long, spindly limbs that seemed to stretch unnaturally. It was humanoid, but not quite human. It moved slowly, deliberately, its eyes glowing in the dim light. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. It was watching me, just like the mannequins, just like the shadows. The rules were clear and I had already broken them, and now the consequences were standing in front of me. I should have run, I should have screamed, but my body refused to move. I was frozen in place, my legs locked, my mind racing with terror and disbelief. The figure took a step closer, its shadow stretching along the walls like a living thing, reaching for me. The air in the hallway grew colder and the whispers intensified. They weren't just voices now. They were thoughts, ideas, memories swirling in my mind. The darkness was consuming me, taking hold of everything I had once known. I tried to speak, to shout, but no words came out. My voice was trapped, like the rest of me, trapped in the museum, in this nightmare I had stumbled into. The figure was closer now, its face hidden in shadow, but I could feel its presence, pressing against me, suffocating me. Then, the door behind me opened. I turned, heart pounding in my chest, to find Mr. Finch standing there. His face was pale, his eyes wide, like he'd been waiting for this moment. "It's too late," he said, his voice cold and distant. "You've broken the rules. You're part of it now." I wanted to scream, to run, but my body wouldn't obey. The museum had me, and there was no escaping it. The figure in front of me stepped forward, its shadow closing in. I could feel its presence, its cold touch on my skin. And then, it spoke. "You're ours now, David." The whispering voices rose in a chorus, drowning out everything else, and I realized with a sickening certainty that I was no longer just a visitor. I had become part of the museum, part of its collection, forever trapped. I don't know how long I've been here. Time has become irrelevant. The days and nights blur together, fading into one endless stretch of shadows. The museum, it's not just a place anymore. It's my prison. The walls feel like they're closing in, squeezing the life out of me. The air is thick, suffocating, heavy with something I can't explain. Something that lingers in the corners, in the cracks, watching me, waiting. The rules still echo in my mind. I can't shake them, never break them, never step into the basement after midnight, always keep the lights on in the east wing. If the shadow of a person moves on its own, do not follow it. Never speak to the mannequins in the foyer. Leave before dawn. I've broken them all. And now, the museum is collecting its price. The shadows are everywhere now. They follow me down the halls, closing in on me, no matter where I go. I can't escape them. The whispers, at first faint like the rustle of leaves in a distant wind, have become louder. I hear my name now, over and over again, in the dead of night. David. The air grows colder, heavier with every step I take. I can feel it. The weight of the darkness pressing down on me, wrapping around me like a cold, suffocating blanket. The walls feel like they're closing in. I'm trapped. I try to remind myself that it's just fear, just my imagination running wild, but the longer I stay, the harder it is to convince myself that I'm not losing my mind. The museum isn't just a building. It's alive. It's watching me. And it's waiting. The mannequins are still here, still in the foyer. I know I shouldn't go near them, but I can't stop myself. Every time I walk past them, I feel their glassy eyes following me. I know it's just a trick of the light, that they're nothing but lifeless statues. But I can't shake the feeling that they're watching me, waiting for something. For me to slip up again, for me to break another rule. I don't speak to them. I don't make eye contact. I try to ignore them, to move quickly past them, but there's something about the way they stand there, so still, so lifeless, that makes me feel like they're more than just objects. They're watching me. They know what I've done, and they're waiting for me to make another mistake. I don't know why, but I can't stop thinking about the basement. The rules are clear. Never step into the basement after midnight. But every time I pass the door, I feel it calling to me. The darkness beyond the threshold seems to whisper my name. I know I shouldn't go down there. I know it's a mistake. But I can't stop myself from thinking about it, from wondering what's waiting for me down there. I've been here long enough. I've broken every rule. What's one more? The second I step into the basement, I know I've made a mistake. The air's thicker down here, colder. The shadows move differently, like they have a life of their own. They twist and shift around me, clinging to my skin, pressing in from all sides. The light from my flashlight barely cuts through the darkness. The space feels vast, endless, as if the walls themselves are stretching away from me. I move deeper into the basement, my footsteps echoing on the cold, hard floor. The further I go, the more oppressive the air becomes. It feels like the walls are closing in, pushing me deeper into the dark heart of the museum. I don't know why I keep going. I should turn back. I should leave before it's too late, but something keeps pulling me forward, something I can't resist. At the far end of the basement, I see it, a pedestal, and on it, a mirror. The frame is dark, swirling with patterns that seem to shift and change as I look at them. The surface of the glass is dull, like it's been forgotten, left to gather dust, but something about it calls to me. I can't look away. I move closer, my hand trembling as I reach for the edge of the pedestal. The mirror seems to pulse, almost like it's alive, its surface rippling as if reacting to my presence. The whispers grow louder, more insistent. I can hear my name again, but it's not just in my head anymore. It's coming from the mirror. David. I stop. My heart races in my chest. Something's wrong. I know it. I can feel it, but I can't turn away. I have to look. I need to know what's inside. I need to understand what's happening. I step closer to the mirror. My hand reaches out, trembling, and touches the glass. The instant my fingers make contact, everything changes. The world shifts. The floor beneath me trembles, and the shadows in the basement seem to stretch toward me. The whispers become a roar, crashing into my mind. The air grows cold, so cold it hurts. My breath catches in my throat as I pull my hand back, but the damage is done. The mirror has opened. I feel it. Something is coming. I can't see it, but I can feel it, like a dark presence pressing in on me. The shadows are no longer just shadows. They have substance now, form. They move toward me, stretching and twisting, pulling at the edges of my vision. I try to turn, to run, but I can't move. My legs are frozen in place. The shadows reach for me. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. The darkness closes in around me, suffocating me. I feel it pull at my skin, at my very soul, dragging me down, deeper into the blackness. The whispers are all around me now, like a chorus of voices, all speaking at once. David! I try to fight it. I try to push away, to break free, but it's too late. The shadows have me. I'm nothing but a part of them now, swallowed whole by the museum. There is no escape, no way out. The darkness has claimed me. I am part of it now. I felt the ground shift beneath me as my fingers brushed against the mirror's surface. It rippled like water disturbed by a stone. The instant I made contact, everything around me twisted and distorted. A sharp, biting cold washed over me, and the museum, the familiar hallways, the exhibits, the very air I had breathed for what felt like forever, began to dissolve into shadows. I gasped, but no air filled my lungs. The darkness felt suffocating, pressing down from every direction, clinging to my skin like a second layer. It was as if the world itself had vanished, leaving me trapped in a vast black void. I reached out instinctively, my hand stretching forward, but it seemed to disappear into the void before me. It felt as if the museum itself was pulling me in, dragging me deeper into its abyss. My heartbeat thundered in my chest, but the sound was muffled, as if it were being absorbed by the very fabric of reality. I couldn't escape the overwhelming sensation of being swallowed by something far too vast, too ancient to comprehend. Then there was nothing. No sound. No light. The cold intensified, and my senses seemed to fail me all at once. I was floating in the void, unable to tell where my body ended and the darkness began. It was like I had become a part of it, sinking deeper into a realm where even time didn't exist. The fear I felt was primal, the kind that grips you when you realize you have no control, no understanding of what's happening to you. I blinked rapidly, trying to steady myself. As my eyes adjusted to the pitch-black surroundings, I began to make sense of the darkness. I wasn't in the museum anymore. The walls had melted away, replaced by an endless empty void. There were no doorways, no windows, no familiar landmarks to help me orient myself. I had no idea where I was. It was a realm of pure darkness, a place that defied all logic and reason. Where am I? I tried to calm my breathing, but the air was thick, heavy, as though the very atmosphere was pressing in on me. My chest felt tight, and panic rose like a tide, threatening to overtake me. My eyes darted around, desperately searching for something, anything, that could offer me a way out of this place. That's when I noticed it. Movement. The shadows weren't just shadows anymore. They were alive. They pulsed and stretched in unnatural patterns, writhing like serpents in the dark. The darkness had a form, a shape. It wasn't just the absence of light anymore. It had substance, like it was something tangible. And as I looked closer, I realized that the darkness wasn't just moving. It had eyes, countless eyes, glowing faintly in the dark, like stars in a void. I staggered backward, my legs trembling with fear, but the shadows followed me. They didn't just cling to the walls like before. No, these shadows rushed toward me, swirling around my feet, curling up my legs like sentient tendrils, reaching for me, pulling me deeper into the void. I tried to scream, but my voice was swallowed by the vast emptiness. No sound escaped my throat. It was as if the darkness had absorbed everything I was, everything I had ever known. And then I heard it. A faint whisper echoed through the dark, as though it were coming from the very walls around me. "Welcome to the realm of shadows, David." The voice was familiar, but distorted, like a distant echo of something I had heard before. My blood ran cold as the words settled in my mind. I spun around, desperately trying to locate the source, but there was nothing. Nothing but the shifting, swirling darkness that surrounded me. The shadows parted before me, and from the depths of the void, something emerged. At first, it was barely visible, just a faint outline, like a silhouette formed from the darkness itself. But as it moved closer, I could see it more clearly. It was a figure, tall and unnaturally thin, with limbs that twisted and stretched like smoke. My heart stopped as I realized that it was me, or at least it looked like me. My breath caught in my throat. The figure moved, mimicking my every motion. I stood frozen, watching as my own twisted form approached me, its glowing eyes fixed on mine with an eerie intensity. It smiled at me, a smile that was full of malice, full of hunger. It wasn't me. It couldn't be. "Do you understand now, David?" The figure spoke, but its voice was wrong. It was my voice, but hollow, empty. "You are mine now." The figure bent down, its limbs stretching impossibly long, casting a vast, monstrous shadow on the ground. I took a step back, terror clawing at my insides. I reached for my flashlight, the one I had been carrying, but it was gone. There was nothing to protect me, nothing but this dark version of myself, this twisted, malevolent shadow. "You are mine now, David. This place, this museum has always belonged to those like me. And now, you are part of it. You are part of me." "No," I whispered, shaking my head in disbelief. "This can't be real." The shadow's laughter echoed in my ears, deep and resonant, vibrating through my bones. I tried to move, to escape, but my legs were frozen. My body refused to obey me. The shadow circled around me, its figure flickering, its shape contorting in impossible ways. It was no longer just a shadow. It was alive, a living, breathing entity. "You never had a choice, David," the shadow continued, its voice dark and mocking. "This was always your fate. You were brought here for a reason. The museum is not just a collection of cursed relics. It is a prison, and you, like all who came before, you have been chosen to be its next warden." "A warden?" The words hit me like a blow to the stomach, and my mind reeled. This wasn't possible. I had no idea what the shadow meant, but the terror gripping me only grew stronger. I had to get out. I had to escape. The darkness shifted again, the walls of the realm pulsing, contracting, expanding like the breath of some colossal living creature. It was as if the very space around me was aware of my presence, reacting to me. The shadows closed in, surrounding me from all sides. There was no escape, nowhere to run. "You see, David," the shadow taunted, its voice thick with mockery. The rules you ignored. They were not just warnings. They were the only thing keeping you from becoming like me, keeping you from being a part of this place." The shadow reached toward me, its tendrils snaking out like black claws, pulling at me. The museum isn't just a collection of strange artifacts. It's a feeding ground. We, the shadows, we feed on fear. The rules keep us contained, but you broke them, and now you belong to us. I recoiled, my chest tightening as the shadows pressed in. I tried to move, to escape, but the shadows surrounded me, pushing me to my knees. I could feel them, gripping me, draining me, pulling at my soul. The pull was like a vortex, dragging me deeper into the darkness, into the abyss. It felt like I was being consumed, piece by piece, until there was nothing left. It was then that I understood the horrible truth. The museum, the strange, eerie collection of relics, it was all part of the trap. The artifacts weren't just objects. They were anchors, points of connection for the shadows. The rules weren't there to protect the museum. They were there to contain the darkness, to keep the shadows from escaping. But I had broken them, one by one. And now, I was paying the price. I fought against it, but I was losing. My strength was slipping away. The darkness had taken hold of me, and there was no escaping it. The final rule echoed in my mind. Leave before dawn. Never stay past the first light of morning. It wasn't just a warning. It was the last chance. But it was too late. The darkness had already consumed me. I stood at the farthest edge of the museum, my chest heaving with labored breaths. Every nerve in my body screamed for escape, but the weight of what I now understood had grounded me in place. The darkness around me wasn't just shadow. It was alive. It moved with me, breathed with me, pressing in from all sides. The museum had become more than just a building. It had transformed into a labyrinth of darkness, each turn twisting tighter, pulling me deeper into its suffocating embrace. I could feel it closing in. The cold, predatory fingers of the darkness tightened their grip on me, as if the very air around me was waiting for dawn. And with the first light of day, the museum would claim me. Forever. I couldn't escape. The walls seemed to pulse, like they were breathing, alive with an insatiable hunger that had existed long before I arrived. My body trembled, the cold seeping deep into my bones, sinking into my very soul. Panic surged through me. The exit was just ahead. I had seen it earlier, had felt the promise of freedom, a glimpse of salvation. My hands were slick with sweat as I reached for the door, but my heart sank as I tried to turn the handle. It wouldn't open. I pulled harder, my fingers slipping, but the door that had been wide open only moments ago was now sealed shut, locked in place as if it had never been there at all. There was no escape. The museum had claimed me. My mind raced, but my thoughts were heavy, clouded by the rules I had broken. Each misstep, each broken promise had led me here, to this moment. There was no turning back. The shadows were closing in. I could see them now, dark, formless shapes in the periphery of my vision. They moved, but not like any shadow I had ever seen. These were alive, sentient, their eyes glimmering in the dark like distant stars. They followed my every movement, mimicking my steps, stretching along the walls like tendrils, flickering with cold malice. The final rule whispered in my mind, but the whisper seemed far away, distant. Leave before dawn. I tried to grasp the fading remnants of the warning, but the sound of the shadows closing in drowned it out. Desperation flooded my veins. I turned again, my breath shallow, searching for a way out, but there was nowhere to run. The walls shifted, folding in on themselves like the museum itself was a living, breathing entity. It was trapping me, closing in on me, suffocating me. The air became thick, pushing against my chest, pressing me back. I could feel the weight of the darkness, the very structure of the building closing around me, squeezing the last remnants of hope from my body. It was as if the museum knew I had broken the rules, and now it was collecting its price. My shadow, my own shadow, was no longer under my control. It twisted and stretched in grotesque shapes, mocking me, growing larger with each passing second. The edges of it reached out like claws, extending toward me, pulling me closer to the heart of the room, to the center of the darkness. I could feel it, the coldness of it, a chilling presence that slid over my skin like ice, tugging at my very soul. My shadow was no longer just a reflection of me. It had become something else, something that had grown stronger, more powerful in the darkness. I tried to scream, but the sound was trapped in my throat. It felt as if my very voice had been swallowed by the darkness. My legs buckled beneath me as the shadows surrounded me, pushing me down. I couldn't breathe. The air was thick, suffocating, and with every breath I took, it felt like I was being pulled deeper into the abyss. The light from the hallway outside flickered, disappearing, leaving me in the complete, suffocating blackness. I felt heavy, as if the museum itself were siphoning my life away. I was no longer a person, no longer an individual. I was becoming part of the museum, part of its cursed collection. It was draining me of everything, my breath, my will, my very soul. And then it happened. The sun began to rise. The faint light of dawn crept through the cracks of the museum, casting a sickly pale glow across the room. I barely had the strength to lift my head, but I could feel the light growing, inching closer. It was so close now, but it felt miles away. The shadows, however, didn't fade. They grew stronger, more invasive, consuming me from the inside out. The darkness had claimed me, and with it, the museum. There was no escape. I could feel the moment of change. My body trembled as I looked around at the walls, now writhing with darkness. I could feel it seeping into me, pulling me into its depths. I was becoming part of the museum's collection, like all the others before me, like the mannequins and the cursed artifacts that lined its halls. The truth slammed into me with crushing finality. I was trapped in the realm of shadows, bound to the same fate as those who had wandered in, only to be consumed. The very walls seemed to breathe with the force of the shadows, and I could feel myself becoming one with them. The sun rose, but it didn't break the darkness. It didn't set me free. The shadows didn't retreat. Instead, they swallowed me whole. My body began to transform. I could feel the change in every cell. My skin turned ashen, losing its warmth, its color. It faded into the shadow, blending with the very walls of the museum. My once solid form dissolved into the darkness. My face, once full of fear, melted into a hollow, shadowy mask, frozen in an eternal expression of terror. I had become a part of the museum's collection. My soul was now bound to the walls, trapped in an endless loop, displayed for the next soul unfortunate enough to wander in. The museum would never let me go. It would keep me, like it had kept the others. The camera zoomed in on my face. The sharp features, once full of fear and confusion, had softened into a blank, shadowy silhouette. My eyes, once wide with desperation, now glowed faintly, hollow and empty in the darkness. My mouth, which had trembled with fear and cries for help, now set in a sinister grin, not my own, but a reflection of the horror that had overtaken me. The world around me fell still. It was as if the museum was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The walls seemed to pulse, the shadows alive, feeding on the fear that filled the air. The time had come. A whisper echoed from the darkness. "It's your turn now." The words hung in the air like a curse, a promise that would never be broken. The cycle would continue. The shadows had claimed me, and they would wait patiently for the next soul to break the rules. The doors, now sealed, would remain open to those who dared to enter the museum's cursed halls. I was no longer just another person. I was part of the museum's collection, an eternal exhibit in the realm of shadows. The camera zoomed out, revealing the endless halls of the museum, each one filled with figures like me. Their forms twisted into shadow, their faces frozen in terror. The cycle would never end. The rules would remain unbroken, waiting for the next victim.